So basic setup, you have your boom coming off the excavator, right, that attaches down here to the stick. So we kind of want to think of, if you think about like a human body, you want to think of this as being more like the shoulder. Right? And then your boom would be more like from your elbow to your shoulder, right, your upper arm. And then once you get down, this would be more considered like your elbow. And then that would come down onto the stick. And the stick would be where this would be almost consider our wrist. You know, if you think of it that way. Where you're going to experience most of the slap's going to be in the wrist area, which would be here in these dog bones, here in the bucket, anything with these pins. You know, you get a lot of breakout force, guys, especially in areas where there's seasonal weather and you do get cold. That ground freezes, you're digging in the clay, you hit bedrock, you know, you're pulling stone out. There's a lot of reasons why you're going to meet resistance while digging, where it's going to force a couple of things to come out of whack or out of normal alignment. Your general wear and tear. The more they beat on it, the more wear it's going to have, the more slop the unit is going to be able to have. You might be able to experience slop in the thumb itself. This is a really good right tight unit. Like I said, I can, you know, if I fired this up and ran it, you'd be able to see what I mean. So one of the things I'm looking at is I'm coming in, first I'm looking at my pins. I'm making sure everything's here and it's tight. I'm checking my dog bones. I'm looking in here. You can see we got these little bearings in here, right? I don't know if you see that, if that's coming in good on the video or not. But I'm looking for little guys like that. That's all the stuff that I know is going to give me indicator that that is a nice tight fit. That's a nice snug fit. That everything's the way it's supposed to be. No slap in the unit. So basically what I'll do is I will start at whatever the attachment is, whether it's a bucket, it could be a hydraulic hammer, whatever the unit is outfitted in when it comes in. Since we are a wholesaler, we sell as is. We don't do a lot of changes or modifications to these machines. We pretty much sell it as it's set up. So I'll come in, I'll check the bucket. I just want to make sure the bucket's sound, it's tight. If the bucket, if it's a digging, if it's a tooth bucket, maybe it's a V-ditch, I want to just check the condition, overall condition of it. Obviously if it's a digging bucket and it's missing teeth, we're going to flag that, we're going to mark that. It's not the end of the world, but it is something we do try to get right in the sales process. So I basically start there, and then I'll get in, you know, to see how the bucket attaches. A lot of guys don't want to go, especially a larger unit. It's probably going to be on a bigger job site, more eyes, more moving parts. I want to make sure that I'm not having to jump out of this machine constantly, or have to have at least 1 or 2 laborers floating around the machine within a safe distance to be able to start coming in and knocking out pins every time I need to switch over applications. If I got to go between hammer and I'm breaking out, and then I want to clean out, and a lot of times you'll see a guy will be able to just kind of boom over, pick up the attachment he wants. He wants to be able to quick attach into that and get moving. So that's the other thing I'm looking for, is does it have a quick attach? It's another big question that we get asked. And that's basically what they're asking is, how does this bucket come off? Is it something manually? Do I have to climb out and manually punch pins out? Or is that something that can be done from inside the cab with a quick connect? Most of them are hydraulic. So I'm looking there. Then, you know, the next thing they want to get into is the thumb. Remember, we talked about this being the wrist. This would be more of the hand. This would be the thumb. That just gives us the opposable gripping force. That's something that basically works against the bucket. If I were to be picking up, you know, some guys want to maybe pull a piece of piping out, or maybe you were drilling and tapping for stone and you want to pull the pieces that you were able to break free out. Logging industry, they love the thumb. Because, you know, they're going to be able to pick up the logs or whatever their long goods and things like that they're pulling out of the field with. So a lot of times they want to know if it is outfitted with a thumb. If it's not outfitted with a thumb, the next question they have while we're in this area of the unit, does it have auxiliary hydraulics? In other words, can I hook a thumb up? Can I hook a hammer up to it? So that's when we want to start inspecting the stick area, and we're basically looking for anything where we could see where these hydraulics would tie in. Obviously you could see here's a nice little valve block, and then I'm checking the source to see everything now as it comes down. I can get into the crazy part of this and show you if I were to open up the engine compartment, go into the hydraulics, I could show you if there was an opening. If it's not showing here, if the machine is actually capable of being set up for that, we can save that for another video. But there is a way I could show you where we could possibly tie in if it doesn't exist. 9 times out of 10, I would say at least 90% of the excavators that we get in, they are set up for the you know, for the attachments. They do have auxiliary hydraulics with it. Moving on from there, when I usually try to get in, I do get into the shoulder area a little bit. All I'm really checking is, I'm looking at these lines, I'm looking at that cylinder, I'm making sure those cylinders are tight, that they're packed tight, there's no leaks. I'm checking the quality of the lines and the fittings here, making sure all this is sound and tight. I have nothing, no impingements, nothing that's going to hang up in here, cause problems for me down the road. And then that'll kind of bring me into where I get into more of the car body, the chassis itself. I'll come in, I'll get in on this big slew ring here. I'm going to see if I can get in on there. I'm looking to make sure that's tight, I have no leaks. You know, nothing's like flagging or showing me any kind of maintenance issue, mechanical issue that's going to be there. From there, I'm going to jump over to a different unit so you don't have to come all the way around. I don't know how tight the video is going to be. But from there, I will get into the rollers, the grouser pads. I'm going to start looking at those things. I'm definitely going to look at the big sprocket. I'm checking the teeth. This one's kind of dirty. We didn't get this one cleaned up yet, but just for the sake of the video, I'm actually checking this. I'm going to go through, we'll roll it, we'll make sure all of these are intact, we don't have any breakage, nothing's in here fouling it up through this linkage. Whether it's a rubber track or it's a steel grouser like this is set up for, I'm checking the quality of that. I want to make sure that that's set up and that's clean. I don't have any issues there, I don't have any leaks. And if I feel like I'm tight in there, everything between the slew ring, this, into this sprocket, bigger sprocket, and the rollers, that's when I'll start moving into the other areas of the unit. I'll jump back into here. I can get into the cab features and functions. For the most part, I'm just checking on some of my safety stuff. I want to make sure I have my lockout, checking simple things like that. I want to make sure all of my controls are tight. Everything's kind of working the way it's supposed to be. I'll fire it up if it has a heads-up display. I'm looking for codes if it's throwing any kind of issue that way. Sometimes these units, Caterpillar's known for it. I think it was pre-2018. They did an update with some of their systems. I'm pretty certain, if I'm not mistaken, that pre-18, one of the error codes that comes up, if you're buying it, I'll have somebody come out, they looked at it in one of the skid steers. And like, oh, it's throwing a code. It was just a warm-up code. So the engine was cold, it needed to warm up, so it kind of locks out certain features, doesn't give you full idle or any of those options until it's at an operating temperature. So a lot of times you'll see that, especially with the Cat. So I always try to check, is that happening? If it is a code, is that what's happening? Is it just that startup code? Anything pre-2018, you're going to notice that. Another thing I like to look at, I come in here, I'm checking my shutoff. You know, obviously this one does have a battery shutoff, which is nice. I'm on a job site. You know, I want to be able to make sure if a kid has access to the cab or somebody from the neighborhood wants to jump in and play around on it, I can lock this out as an extra security feature so that my excavator stays where it's supposed to be. Nobody's playing with it. This is actually a pretty good, clean one to kind of show you the area. So here's my battery set up. You know, my fuel's up, I mean my air filter's up here. I can kind of take a look at all the coolant system, the radiator and all in here. I'm just checking to make sure, obviously nothing's in here, animals aren't getting in here, birds aren't nesting in here. I want to make sure I have no leaks, that all of this is tight, nothing's punctured through any of these. Another, you know, quick area, you don't have to spend a lot of time in this compartment. Just want to make sure that my batteries look sound, I'm not seeing any leakage. I'm not noticing any cables are melted. There's no indication that this unit kind of overheated, had any fire or anything. You know, I'm checking the board, you know, I make sure everything looks tight up there, nothing looks melted or singed, or everything just seems to be in good working order. While I'm in these compartments, I do like to make sure that the latching system's okay on these. Another thing that'll drive you nuts as an operator is when you got one of these side panels, if this doesn't latch properly, you know, this thing's blowing in the wind and it's flopping around, it could swing open on the wind, hit somebody. Obviously they shouldn't be this close if you're operating to the machine, but if somebody did have to come in close on it, you want to make sure all these areas are tight, functioning. We'll swing around on the back here from this counterweight. We'll make our way to the other side. This is where we're going to hide all the joy of the hydraulics. So another area that I do like to spend a little bit more time in, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to make sure, you know, any kind of shutoffs are open, and I can check my filter. I want to see if, you know, what my maintenance looks like on those. I'll make sure everything in here is tight, there's no leaks. So I'm going to just really once over, I'll check all these fittings, I'm going to check these lines. I'm just making sure all this is clean. Anywhere I see any attachments, I'm just kind of getting in on those areas. like I said, the filter, any kind of safety issue. This should be done as a, like right now I can tell like this unit's going to need fluid. We're low on hydraulic fluid. I'm looking at this glass. So I'll flag this now that I see this. This will go on my list. I'll let the yard supervisor know. He'll get maintenance involved. We'll come out and put some fluid in this at some point today, hopefully. If not, by the end of the week, I'll be able to pivot over to this and get that done. If you're a good operator and you're doing your walkarounds before you operate any piece of equipment, obviously you're going to be looking for your sight glasses. It's good to know where these things are. You don't want to run this unit dry. A lot of these units are smart, the newer stuff with the electronics. It's going to throw a bell or a whistle and let you know, hey, you're low. These features aren't available to you right now, if they're available to you at all. But again, while you're doing your walkarounds, whether you're looking for a pre-purchase inspection or you're just doing your walkaround before you get started, you know, getting ready to go to work, it's a good habit to be into. You always want to make sure you're doing your due diligence. You know, a couple $100 in hydraulic oil could be the difference between a couple $1,000s in repair. And